Okay, 15 minutes. I'm going to try and get through this really incredible script, and this was just going off the cuff, and I'm going to do it from scratch after I get this started. Yeah, I hit it from scratch and saw what I would make, and I really found out something nice and smooth in network surfaces. So let's take that object and throw that into invisible. Oops, I got a couple things there. Got another one here I don't need anymore. And we're going to jump over to shaded, and I'll show you how this sucker is made. We'll delete that. And what I'm going to do is build it from scratch. So it's just going to take me a second. Let me get scratch and show you what we have. What I did was I went into vectors and I grabbed myself a populate 3D, and I decided to take my count down to 5. And I think I had a seed on it of something, probably cooking that up around, well, whatever, 0 to 100. I decided I also wanted to make a series, so I went to my sequence tool and grabbed out series. And you'll see kind of why I did this. I'm going to take my count to the exact same count. And what I did was I wanted to definitely generate some points. And I don't usually deal in containers, but sometimes I deal in containers to see things. So basically I have a series of points here. I've got it set at 5, and my series is set as well, but it needs to be visualized as well. So what I went into was I actually generated a point. My little daughter just never gives up, even in the middle of the night. And so I have 5 points here and I have 5 points here. You can see how I'm starting to think, hey, let's join these together. And I put this one through a graph mapper, went in input, graph mapper, and I think I set that one to sine and put that into the Z. So I went in here and I said, let's grab a graph type sine, and let's lift that up a bit. Let's drop that down a bit. And you could change this to whatever you want. I think I had it set to about that. So there's a little bit of a sign. I'll probably end up amplifying it later. I'll show you what I did with it. And actually, what I did was I took my domain up to 11 and 11 because it was a series. And I thought that would be a good thing to begin. And what I did was I was looking at data and trying to find out what I had. And obviously, I'm saying, okay, I got one branch with 5 items. And we could look at the same thing over here. It's going to be hard to get through this in 15 minutes. I have another set of points, which is one branch with 5 items as well. And what I then did was I said, okay, I'll interpolate that curve. And she just doesn't stop talking. And we still got have things in a list form, so you can see that that curve's coming out along with these points. And I'm having fun thinking about what I may end up doing with this. And what I decided to do was I was going to orient my geometry. So I'm going to go in here, and I basically wanted to take that, and I decided let's just grab a point, which is going to be 0, 0, 0 as the source, which is the beginning of where that curve might exist. Actually, it's down here, so I'm going to orient that curve to that 0, 0, 0. Take this geometry, the curve geometry here, and put it on the target to those points, and you'll see exactly what happens. And boom, they all get oriented on there like that. As soon as I have things going on like that, I usually get into my transformations, and I grabbed a rotate 3D. I took all my geometry to rotate. I deal in radians, so I typed in pi, and I decided that I'd leave the center where it's at, I'd leave the axis where it's at, and I'd throw that through a range tool, which would default to a domain of whatever I set it to from 0, 0. So I type in 0, 2.00, and I've got 0 to 2 pi domain and steps. I've got to go in here and I've got to add to make this work, and you'll see why. I've got, right now I have 11 items coming out to match 5 pieces of geometry. Well, that's not cool. So let's grab this count and use that so things stay parametric, put it in the steps, and you'll see, well, because of the series, it's pumped it up to 6. So I'm going to have to go down here into the factor of the steps, and I'm going to have to, I've got 6 items here. I definitely want to match the data, so I'm going to have to go in here and hit expression x minus 1. And that's going to bring that down to 5 items, and that one down to 5 items. So we've matched up the planar curves with the angles, which are all set to 0 right now, but we can make that a little more exciting by taking our rotation through 2 pi. And you'll see what happens. You end up getting this staggered, crazy little kind of set of lines. As soon as I do that, I'm like, well, what should I end up doing with that? I've taken the orientation, I've taken the transformation. Let's see how it looks through analyzing a surface, and the best tool to do that is with a loft. Let's put it in. Now we have this weird loft. Now what's missing here is that I probably should go in here and loft options, close my loft. And I will do that and say, okay, well, there's an awkward curve. It's not exactly what I want. So I'm going to just play with my seed and bring that up to whatever, let's say 54. That looks like a decent shape with 5, and that looks like it'll handle that shape pretty well. And what I'm going to want to do now is finish the script by taking that and making it a solid for something. So I've got a nice surface. How can I start making that a solid? And we are at, hard to see which, I can't really see how many minutes on here, 5 minutes at. So I think in 10 minutes I can finish this off. What I'm going to do is I'm going to divide. I'm going to go to my surface tools because I have a surface, and I'm going to divide my surface. And in dividing my surface, I'm going to take a U and V count, and I'm going to set my count pretty high so I can have pretty articulated things. I'm going to take 20 as my count in my U and V direction. And we'll just keep plugging through with what's happening, and then you can see what's happened. And I'm going to move that geometry, so transformation move. And what's nice about this is you just move your geometry and move it in the space of your normals. However, I want to be able to have a little control over that, so I'm going to go into my vectors, jump down here, grab my amplitude, grab my vector, and I'm going to be able to multiply that, get that up there. And I'm probably going to do something, I don't know, let's do 2.00. Let's have it pretty thin just to start. So we'll put it down around 1 unit, 1.36 units, and there we go. We've moved that geometry. Now, any geometry that I want to remake a surface out of, I'm going to have to flatten that data. So I don't usually flatten data. I'm not playing with Path Mapper, but I will flatten it that way. And I'm going to reconstruct my points, surface from points, and I'm going to try and match my data. And what you have to do here again is you've got to make sure everything lines up. So I've got to add 1 to my count. If I have 441 items, points coming in, the U count has to match what the other U count was. So if I go back here and grab my data back to basically, I'll show you this in a second. I'm looking at my other script. I'm going to add my 20 items, but I'm going to add 1. So I double click and hit quotes 1. And that will enter 1 as a digit, and I can put that into my U count, and we should be able to have a nice surface. And there we go. So we have our initial surface here, and we have our outer surface there. Now, how are we going to close this up? Well, it's easy to think about closing the top and bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my loft back over here. Where'd that loft go? There it is. And I'm going to go to my surface tools, and I'm going to debrep that, because I'm going to be using that as data. And I also want to be able to debrep this, so I can start analyzing those surfaces. What I'm going to grab out of them is list items of, and this is how I do it most of the time. I'm going to grab a list item and a list item here, and I'm going to grab their edges and see what lines up on their edges. And as I look and I say, well, I don't really want those bottom edges. I want the top edges, so I probably will go in here and type in 2 as a slider, and that should move my things up to the top as opposed to the bottom. And you can see if I circle all this, you see I'm actually do-si-doing with, if I put that all on, you can see I'm getting the top rings now, and I'll be able to close those off. The bottom ones are not such an issue. The bottom ones can be done fairly simple by bringing down these and having the list item set at quote 0, which will set up the list item 0 and 0, which you could just default to 0, 0 if you left this off, which would be fine as well. And you'll see now what I'm getting is I'm getting the bottom curve and the bottom curve. And what I can do with those is simply put on a surface patch. And that's kind of a cheat for me. I try not to use patch unless I'm totally desperate, but I don't mind doing it. Patch that one off, and then patch this one off. And there we go. You got that bottom and that bottom, and they're separate, which is kind of nice. They actually don't sit on the same. So one sits just lofted beautifully to normals above the other one. And the more you articulate that, the better it'll get with more points. Now those I'm actually going to take into a merge tool, because I'm going to need those surfaces. So I'm just going to go down here and I'm going to grab that one and that one. I know those are 2 things that I want. I know the other 2 things I want are this surface, because I'm going to be using that, and the original loft. So I'll go back to that. There we go. I'm watching my time. And now what am I going to do with this last digit to close up that top? How am I going to close there to there? Believe me, I tried everything. I tried list items and grabbing those, and tried to do a loft through, and tried to do a patch, tried to do a sweep, tried to do every single thing I could think of. And at 9 minutes, I decided I like network surfaces. So I went into curve and I divided that surface. I said, well, let's divide that curve here. And let's divide that curve there. Let's see how 10 works as just, when they have defaults, what's the reason of that? And I said, well, I want to be able to see those two in relation to one another. And I drew 2 lines. And that's where I started thinking, well, if I could just get those lines to sweep this way or loft that way or do anything. But then I realized I have lines, curves in the U direction, and I have curves in the V direction. And that sounds to me like a pretty powerful tool that whenever I can get it to work, I'm happier than I've ever been, which is network surfaces. So what I'm going to do is grab all of those lines, but I've got to flatten those once again. I'm going to grab all those lines, put them into my V, and my U is going to come directly out of these two. And in doing that, I'm going to have to flatten those ones as well, so they don't come up as a grafted list, and they're actually being flat. They're being red because you need certain amounts of data. Hold down and shift to put the other two in, and there you go. What a great way to get a surface between two other points. And as soon as I did that, let me jump out of here. Let's go into here and hit preview off. And then let's go into here and let's hit preview on. And let's take that off so we see what's going on. You see I can grab that little cap and that little bottom. And I have a pretty amazing form. What I can do is just grab that last little surface, tuck it into there. I think we've got everything. Get rid of your network surfaces off. And I probably, for your convenience sake, should have done that. Put bifocals on so you knew what every single thing was. We've got a little bit of time to refresh. Great object. Take it into a bake. Put it onto something juicy. Group things together. Leave it. Jump into all your views. Pop that one back into render. You're there. Maybe leave that one. Grab that object. Throw it into something like Zebra if you want, just to see continuity. And that is an absolute amazing, elegant, perfect form, which I could never have made in Rhino. And I made it in Grasshopper. And I actually solved my solution of lofting with network surfaces. And that is a watertight, incredible form to take the print and make into a beautiful stainless, if that's what you want. And what I'm going to do also with this form, I'm going to go in, I'm going to play with my diameter so I can make that as thick as I want. And you can see it really balloon up a boat for washing your feet, if that's so much what you want to do. And you've got some pretty awkward shapes. And I've really tried to stress getting away for myself from any symmetry. And points, lines, curves to solids are really the answer to that. Hopefully it looks good to you guys. Bake. We'll throw that one in the red again. Group it. And I got a really nice, beautiful shape. That's just, the patch is kind of funky. And we've got a little mistake there on the bottom, so I've got to check that. And that can be influenced by playing around with your cosine and sine curves at the beginning. Playing around with this little sine and not cosine, but if I start to play with that and undulate and move that and play it into higher realms, take this little object, slide it off to the side, which is always fun. And you watch how these things change shape and they start to behave differently. And this one's kind of blown up on me and done something funky. I've taken it a little too far much than I wanted to go. You've got a little undulating form there that's not behaving. See, you got to play off your geometries and see where you can go and see where there's faults and errors, and end up making some pretty incredible forms. I'm going to jump back into there, go into my standard visible. There we go. A couple of nice shapes. Play around with and boat around with and see how it ends up working. The whole script in the last couple of minutes, I'll just go back into it. Like I said, populate 3D, grab a series. You're going to be able to grab some points, a set of other points. The relationship between those 2 points is worth playing with. Interpolating those curves, orienting those curves, revolving those curves, lofting those curves. You have a surface. As soon as you have a surface, divide that surface, move those points out. Point a surface from points again, debrep, so you can analyze the tops and bottom as list items, to divide the curves, to put them into lines, and use the network surfaces to create the top. The bottom one can easily be done by just a patch and a patch. And I'll probably find another way to do that because, like I said, patch is never that satisfactory in my mind. It doesn't make me super happy. But getting beautiful, non-symmetrical, elegant forms is really what this is all about. So I'm just going to jump in there, grab that guy, put him on an E-map, and see how my surface is. And we're wrapping it up. Thanks very much for watching. Let me try E-map again. There we go. There you go. I'll just jump out of that. There you go. Nice shape. And just check it out for any problems or any inconsistencies. And if you ever wanted to make some anamorphic cool sculpture, that's the way to do it. Really nice script for making an infinite array of forms. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. Like I said, that was off the cuff. I definitely just went into it. I got stuck on the